ओमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदाङ्कितं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरोन् वैष्णवश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्णचैतन्यदेवां श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगण श्रीललिता विशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुण सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामनि नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणी निर्विशेषाय शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणी। जयो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा. um, Welcome you all to the online level 2 Bhagavad Gita classes from ISKCON Mangalore. So until yesterday we completed the chapter 8. Yeah. So chapter 8, the name was Attaining the Supreme. Yeah. And then today we'll jump in to the next chapter, so which is Raja Vidya, Rajaguhyam. Yeah. So we'll actually touch base what we covered so in our last section, right? So in chapter 8, right? So it all started with Arjuna's questions, right? And then Krishna clarified those things, and then at the time of death, so what happens to the yogis, yeah, and then and how devotees are not bewildered with the place, circumstances, and time. Yeah. And then we did a comparison of the material world and spiritual world. Right? How does the spiritual world look like? Yeah. And then so once we go there is no coming back. And so even though we actually saw the pralayas also, so we saw Brahma's days, or yeah, and at the end of each Brahma's day, so we have devastation. Yeah, so that small pralaya, and then again once he wakes up, again the creation. So this continues until 100 such years, and at the end there is Mahapralaya, wherein even the upper planets, the Brahmaloka, is also been vanquished, and so even there is no Lord Brahma also at that time. So again, at the Lord's sweet will, he actually manifests everything, and then the cycle goes on, right? And then we saw the timings also, right? So for yogis and yeah, the karmis also we have seen. So what happens? You go to the upper planet where so basically the karmis are who follow the karma kanda, and then so once their pious credit is finished, they again come back. Similarly for yogis, so we did see that they have time, right? So an Uttarayana, and then so waxing moon, waning moons, and light of the day. So many criteria they have to meet in, and then so they have to leave the body. And then we saw about the Ashtanga yogis also, right? So how they meditate and then keep all chakras in line, and so they actually withdraw all the senses. Yeah, so all these are very difficult parts, which is impractical in this age. And at the end, so we did see that the devotional service, right? So is of all these yoga astras, devotional service is the best. Yeah. So wherein it covers all those things, right? Dhyaneshu, Tapeshu, and then we covered all those things. Wherein at the eighth chapter, right? So Lord concluded that devotional service is the best among all of them, right? And then it covers all these things. Yeah. And so now this chapter 9 is nothing but the extension of the introduction which was given in chapter 8, right? In the last verse, whatever we have seen through, right? So it will be the extension. And here, right? So the Lord stresses on the devotional services, yeah. And initially, the first half, right? Say of this is based on say how say the first three verses, right? So he gives in say the devotional service who are faithful and faith who do not have faith, right? So basically the qualifications, yeah. And hearing again, here also the importance is stressed on hearing, yeah. So and so then he gives the relationship to the material world, yeah. So Krishna's relationship with the material world, and then how fools neglect bhakti, yeah. So and there and rest part of the section he actually devotes it for the devotional service, okay, to Krishna. So this is how it will be break down. And yeah, so basically there'll be five sections, I think so, yeah. And so in the beginning itself, right, so the Lord actually tells us in first three verses, right, the qualifications are which are required, okay. And this is basically, if you look in, right, so this chapter is basically an extension of chapter 7, we can say, yeah. So this is what we covered yesterday, yeah. So the most confidential knowledge is nothing but chapter 9, okay. So this is what we covered in our chapters. And then so, yeah, so if you look in, right, so that is what is mentioned here also. She explained Ananya Bhakti, right? So this is only Kevala Bhakti. So we saw that thing also, right? Mishra Bhakti and your Ananya Bhakti also we touch based, yeah, in last chapter. And then he says that Bhakti is best form of yoga, yeah, because it has got all of, so we'll go through that now with the Bhakti and all those things. And chapter 9 supplies specific knowledge required for performing the most confidential yoga. So this is what. And then chapter 7 is nothing but more or less like 9 on. Yeah. And then these are the five sections: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So this is about, say, those who have faith and faithless. And then this is the relationship, say, how this material world and everything actually work. And so these are all creations of the Lord, and then how Lord is aloof uh, from these things, yeah. And then this is non-worshipper, and then Krishna as the supreme object, and the glories that will be at the end of this section, okay. So more or less this is what the sections are, five sections, okay. So here non-envious allows one to hear confidential knowledge about Krishna, and faithlessness forces one to birth and death. So here the gist is already given. Yeah. So those who are having faith, right, so they can actually hear about Krishna also, because even few of them cannot hear about Krishna also. Okay. So they will might be envious for one thing or the other. So could be uh, so their lifestyle is so, or so whatever it is, so their gunas and all. But yes, and this particular in the first verse itself, right? So the Lord says about um, the faithfulness, right? So who can the non-envious, okay? So that we'll see in this verse itself. Okay. So this is 9.1. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Idam tu te guhyatamam prakvakshayam anusuyave jnanam vijnanam sahitam yajnatva mokshasya ashubhat. So here he says anusuyave. Yeah, so this is what is important. Yeah, anusuyave is nothing but one who is non-envious. Okay, so this word. Yeah, okay, this is the one which has. And the Supreme Lord says, "My dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you the most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence." Okay. So now the Lord is going to reveal the most confidential information. Okay. So until now, say he has covered the confidential information. Okay. And then the more confidential thing, and then now he's coming to the most confidential thing. Okay. So Anusuyave is nothing but non-envious, and then who is qualified to hear? Yeah. So, and we know, right, in 7th chapter also the Lord says that thus Arjuna is his dear friend and devotee, right? So he has all the right, say, characters, or say we can say the right mood to actually hear this. Yeah. So, and then, so what happens if we hear, right? So, about Krishna, so there are two things, right? So, one is spiritual advancement, and then the other thing is freedom from material misery. So, it is nothing but attachment to Krishna and then detachment to the material world. Yeah. And here, right, so the confidential thing which we are saying, right? So, what is the confidential thing which was being discussed, right? In the chapter 2 and 3, right? So, we knew that the knowledge of spirit and the body, right? So that is confidential. Okay. So, and the more confidential is comes in chapter last two chapters which we covered. Yeah. So wherein so we know more about Supreme Lord's energy. Yeah. So the Krishna's energies we know. So that is more confidential. Yeah. And the most confidential is the unalloyed devotion. Devotion. Yeah. So that is Ananya Bhakti is the most confidential thing, and then how do we do it? Yeah, so all those things will be covered now. So yeah, deals with and delineates the glories of the Lord. Okay, so this is what we discussed, right? Lord Krishna realization. Yeah, so 2 and 3. So this is soul and body, so we know it, and then this we know more about the Lord. Yeah, so his energies and all those things, right? So that is more confidential. Most is nothing but this is Ananya Bhakti. So what is the qualification? We should not be non-envious, yeah, and we should have faith. So without faith, nothing will happen. Yeah. So that is the factor for devotional service. Okay. Um, so, and most of the times, right? So we say that we can't chant properly, or even though if we chant, then we miss one or two words. Yeah. And that's all because we don't have firm faith. Yeah. So that's the reason we don't get the taste even say after doing chanting, right? So that's the first criteria. Yeah. So we should have faith in the Lord. Yeah. So if we don't, right? So then it is difficult. Yeah. So if you have heard today's Bhagavatam class, then Sachidanand Prabhu was saying, right? So what happens to the jaundice patient, right? So he was giving the example of jaundice patient, which is which you'll find in most of the purports of Prabhupada. Yeah? So wherein he says that the patient who is having jaundice, right? So sick jaundice patient is given sugar candy, okay, and then he feels bitter, but that is the cure, okay. So is sugar candy anytime bitter? No, right? But he feels bitter at that time. So we are also like that. So when we are chanting, we are getting that bitterness. We are not able to get the sweetness. Yeah. So that's one thing. And useless commentary of high academic scholars gives inaccurate information. Sorry. Um, gives inaccurate commentaries because they are envious. Okay. And because they want to actually push their stuff into their commentaries. Yeah. And so most of the time, so they can't follow all these rules and regulations. Yeah. As per the Shastras, they can't. So they'll tweak it. So wherever they can't, right? So they tweak that portion according to their um, convenience. Yeah. So one who criticizes the character of Krishna without knowing him is a foolish person. Yeah. And recommendations is avoid such commentaries and then say hear only the bona fide commentary. Yeah. This is all through association. Yeah. So idam jnanam. So this jnanam is nothing but the nine process of devotional service. Yeah. So what happens by doing so? One's heart gets cleansed. Yeah. And then one gets elevated to the spiritual knowledge. So yesterday we were seeing, right? So the different stages. So what happens? So once with the association, he moves into the, he actually gets more interest. So once he hears properly, right? So any of the from a devotee, right? So then he actually stops sinful reactions and then see he takes interest in the subject, yeah. So, and then he does service and then he attains um, the advanced stage, yeah. And he gets ruchi, asakti, samadhi, and all those things we saw in yesterday, right? So those are the things. So Lord Krishna imparts most confidential knowledge and realization to Arjuna. Yeah, what is the qualification? He is free from envy. And what means to receive? So proper hearing. Yeah. And what are the benefits? So we'll get relieved from this material bondage. Yeah. And in the next chapter, we'll get to know, in the next verse, we'll see Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam. So that is also coming in. And then anyone remembers what are the 9 devotional services we have? Say, you can go ahead.
Kirtan, Shravanam,
Yeah.
Sadhu Sangha,
Mm. Kirtanam,
Shravanam,
Padasevanam, Shravanam 3.
ఆత్మనివేదనం
4.
Seva,
Sorry?
Seva,
No. Next. Anyone has?
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी
Mataji, go ahead. Hare Krishna.
विष्णु पादनम
Padasevanam, he said.
दासं
Uh,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, the verses Savanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Dasam Dasam Satyam Atma Nivedanam. I think that is one. Savanam
Archanam is missing, Prabhu.
Archanam. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have Archanam also. Yeah. So remember this because this will be useful. Yeah. So we should know this. So hearing, chanting. So this is Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, and Atmanivedam. Okay. So all these things, these are Navaveda bhaktis. So we should know. Yeah? So this is useful even in our next levels also, right? So this will be required. Okay. So in any of these things, say we can do bhakti. Yeah. So these are 9 different ways. So basically, say we can actually do these 3 first. Yeah. And then these 3 things happens in the morning. So if you look in, right, say the way Prabhupada had designed our morning program, right? So hearing, we hear Srimad Bhagavatam chanting. So we do chant, right? And then so remembering, you chant. Yeah. So here you do kirtan, here you chant, and then you do deity worship, and then you do praying also. Yeah. So majority of them so gets covered. Yeah. So 4 or 5 things get covered in the in morning program itself. So the next verse, right? It says, Raja Vidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksha Dharmyam Susukham Kartam Avyayam. So this is Raja Vidya, okay, and Rajaguhyam. This knowledge is the king of education. So Raja Vidya is nothing but king of education, and Rajaguhyam. Guhyam is nothing but secret. Okay, the most secret of all secret. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and is joyfully performed. Okay. So, why is it called Rajavidya? Okay. So, because there are a lot of philosophers. Okay. So, say like Kannada, yeah, and Vyasadev, yeah, so and Narada, right? So Kapila, yeah, okay. Say all these things, all they have told that this is the essence of all their philosophy, which is not bhakti. Okay. And so the Rajaguhyam, which is the most confidential knowledge. Okay. So these are nothing but the devotional service and the complete knowledge. Okay. So the complete knowledge of the soul. Yeah. So the soul is imperishable, and then say if we give, and we should give the positive information, yeah, so about the soul. So most of the education, right, so doesn't talk about soul. Okay. Say, and if you see our academics, right, so most of them feel that uh, once the body is no more, right? Even the soul is no more, but that's not the actual thing. The soul is very active, and then it moves on, right? So we learned these all things in chapter 2. Yeah. And then say, how do we actually guide, or how do we learn about the positive information about the soul, and then say what is the ultimate goal of that soul, right? So we should know. So that is the confidential knowledge. Yeah. And say purest. So pavitram idam uttamam. It is purest of all activities. So devotional service is pure, so which actually can remove all our sinful reactions. Yeah. And then it is pavitram. Okay. And uttamam. Uttamam means ultimate. Yeah. So even there is an description of uttamam as beyond tamas. Yeah. So so tama means tamas, right? Uttamam is beyond the material activities. Okay. And pratyaksha vagamam. So direct perception of the self by realization. Yeah. So and dharmyam. So it is the perfection of religion. And susukham is nothing but happiness or blissful. and avyayam is nothing but eternally everlasting. Yeah. So every word here has a very good meaning. Yeah. So and then so you should actually read the purport. So Prabhupada that has written at least a 5-page purport for it. Yeah. So whatever I'm talking is all from that purport only. So further glorification of most confidential knowledge. Yeah. Raja Vidya. So this is king of all knowledge because it is the essence of all doctrines, philosophy explained before. So Raja Guhyam is nothing but to talk about eternal activities of the soul, and then this gives positive information. Yeah. So this is the most confidential information. So and so Pavitram Idam Uttamam, right? So we spoke that it is purest and then it actually um, purifies us from the sinful reactions. Yeah. So, and Uttamam is nothing but implies beyond material activities. Tamas, we just touch base. Pavitram implies all 4 stages can be purified. So, actually, if you look in at this, so stage, right? So, think this as if a tree, right? So, the example of tree can be taken here. So, wherein so the seed for any tree, right? So first the seed has to be sowed, yeah. So, and then the seed grows into a plant grows into a tree, and then it gives bears, flowers, and fruits. Okay. Similarly, our sinful reactions, right? So first, so they'll be in the form of bija, and so they'll actually fructify, and then we'll get sufferings. Okay. These things. So all these stages and all, right? So you'll read in detail in level 3 or level 4, so wherein we'll touch nectar of devotion, right? So there is a section which deals with this, but for now, right? So just know that it is similar. So all these sinful reactions, right? So for few of these sinful reactions, there might be instant karma. Okay. Say like say if um, someone does some mischief and then if he gets a tight slap there, right? So his karma is over. But for few of the things, right? It will take time to fructify and then he'll get those results back. Okay. So it is like for few, it goes to the court and then the judge has to, if there is a robbery or something is been done, right? So that actually needs more investigation, right? The police has to come, case has to be lodged. Yeah. But at the end, see, he gets his whatever injustice, whatever he has done, right? So he gets the judgment. Yeah. So the few of the things will take time, and then few of the things happen instantly. So all these things you'll study. So don't worry about these things. Just look at the growth of a tree. Yeah, and so just remember this for now. This is required and pratyaksha vagamam. Yeah, so direct perception of self by realization. So this is by devotion, yeah, by practicing devotional service in the association of advanced devotees. Yeah, how do you get this perception? Yeah, and so the example is nothing but chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, right? So it gives so much of transcendental pleasure. Yeah. So this is again all those things, right? Dharmyam, Susukham, and Avyayam. Yeah. So if you look dharmyam, so this is the highest goal of religion. Yeah. So without performing religious processes, performing religious processes, one can be raised to the highest. Okay, without one cannot be can be raised. How? Okay. So this is a question. Yeah. So this is a question which is being asked. So how can one without following the regular religious processes like studying the Vedas, yeah, and then following through all those rituals, right? How is it possible that one can actually attain the highest goals? It is possible through association. Yeah. So here the example of Narada has been given. So I'm not sure how many of you know that say Narada was a Dasi Putra. Okay. So in his earlier birth, right? So he was a Dasi Putra. Yeah. Uh, so I'll just cut short the story. So it's a long story though. I'll cut short. So Narad Muni, in his first birth, he was a Gandharva. Okay. And so there was some, I think there was a function kind of thing which was going in, and then where so people were doing some Vishnu Smaranam or yeah, and then so here this Gandharva came, and then he actually sang some opposite bhajans also, so which actually disturbed all the devatas and all, right? So who were doing that, and then so they cursed him that you will go to the material world, and then as a maid servant son. Okay, that was the curse. So in the next life, he became the maid servant's son. Okay, so her mother, right? So her mother used to do menial things, and what happened is during the Chaturmas, right? So there were, say earlier in the past, right? During the Chaturmas, say these devotees, right? The bhaktas, so they actually all the sages and all, right? So they'll actually reside in a place for 4 months. They'll not travel, or they don't. Say they'll only be in a place. So it happened that so they got to the same place where Narad Muni was there as a maid servant's son, and then it so happened that his mother was helping them, say doing all services to them, right? So maid servant services she used to do them. So at that time, even Narad Muni was very small. Yeah, so he was 3 4 year old only. So he was actually when all see the Vedantists, right? So when they were discussing topics and all those things, so he was sincerely hearing them. Yeah, and then he also did service to them, and so he got more taste in it. Yeah. So he was listening, and then say he was interested more, and then he was very keen, and then he did take the permissions of asking them to eat the remnants. Yeah. So and then they agreed for it. So he started having the remnants, yeah, and he was listening them. So with that, he got so purified, and then he actually was totally changed into a devotee. Yeah, and then after that, the devotees left. The Vedantists left after the 4 months, and then Narad Muni's mother also leaves her body, and then Narad Muni actually continues that journey. Yeah? So being alone, right? So he doesn't lament or anything. So he moves on in search of the Lord. Yeah, and then it happens that at the age of the same age, right, 4 or 5, he actually meditates, and then he sees the Lord, but so he was not so matured, right? So he couldn't know that the Lord has appeared, and then the second time he says that I want to see you once again. He tried the same formula, but the Lord said that yeah. So I just appeared for the first time to actually give you some condolence kind of thing. But yeah, so to attain me, so you'll have to become more perfect in this, and then say you'll reach my abode. So he does that, and then he reaches the abode. Yeah. That's Narad Muni. So Narad Muni didn't go to any of the Shastric schools, yeah. So or he didn't study Vedas and all, but he was a pure devotee. So he got all the knowledge by association only. And then say Now, say at the third life, right? So he became Narad Muni. Yeah? So one of the great devotees, right? Who can travel to any planet without any restriction. Yeah. So that is Narad Muni. Yeah. And then Susukam, right? So everything is blissful. So ISKCON carries that, right? So what do we do? So mostly it will be hearing. Yeah. So you hear Bhagavatam, all Krishna's pastimes, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, yeah, lectures, we do service, yeah, and then we chant, dance, and then have prasadam, right? So it's all bliss. So it's not unlike wherein you'll have to go and meditate and then say you'll have to starve and all those things, right? And avyayam, so everlasting. Yeah. So that is what is covered in this. And this is for the faithless. Yeah. So this particular verse, so the Lord speaks about uh, the one who does not have faith. Yeah. Those who are not faithful on the path of devotional service cannot attain me. Okay, so this is the Lord Himself says in right. So directly He says, "O conqueror of foes, but return to the birth and death in this material world." So those who are not faithful, so they will be actually moving in this cycle of birth and death. Yeah. So there is no end to it. So, what is the definition of faith? Yeah, simply by serving Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. So, this is like watering the root, right? Instead of watering to the leaves or branches, we should actually water to the root. How faith is created? By association of devotees. Yeah. And then faith is the most important factor for progress in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that is there. And then even the Lord says, right? So, ye yatha mam prapadyante. So, depending upon our faith, right? And then, so depending upon faith, there are three levels. Okay. Three levels of devotees. Yeah. So, one is here it is written as third, but yeah, even the Kanishta, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. Yeah. So, those are actually divided into three. So, the Kanishta is the lowest. Yeah. So, wherein he doesn't have good faith and knowledge of our scripture, so easily he can fall down. Yeah. And see, the next level has firm faith. Yeah. But is not very advanced in devotional scripture, simply trying to follow by association and simplicity. Yeah. And the first is the first class devotee, so wherein he is well versed with all devotional scriptures and is there is no chance of fall down. Yes, development of faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. So with following the Krishna consciousness, so we can develop the faith. So we'll have to move transit from one level to the other. Yeah, and then now in this section, right? So the Lord gives the Aishwarya Jnana. It's nothing but Krishna's relationship with the material world. So everything, so which is being created, right? So everything so works under his supervision. Yeah. So but he is he's aloof from it. Yeah. So and then he gives his inconceivable relationship with the material world. Yeah. So Aishwarya Jnana is nothing but knowledge of opulences. Yeah. So that is what say all the universes and all, right? Say all run by his orders. Yeah. So we'll just see these slokas. Yeah. So by me, in my unmanifested form, the entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Yeah. So and yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Yeah. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, still myself is the source of creation. Yeah. And we'll finish this verse and then we'll go through them. Yeah. As the mighty wind blowing everywhere, always rests in the eternal space, know that in the same manner all beings rest in me. Yeah. So the Lord says here that everything, right, is actually pervading. So the whole entire universe is working under his direction. And then he says that avyakta murtani, right? So wherein in his unmanifested form, right? So that it means basically that we cannot see his inconceivable potencies. Yeah. And so he says that the inconceivable mystic opulences of the Lord, right? So everything that is created does not rest on me. Yeah, and then he's aloof. Yeah. So he says that all the creation is being done. So and he actually lives. He designates the directors or say administrators, and then he leaves the jivas into them. Yeah, so we know that the whole material creation, right? So it was done. So the material creation was done by the three Vishnus, right? So first the Karnodaksha Vishnu comes in, yeah, so, and then out of his body pores, right? So the universes are expanded, yeah, and then say we get the Karnodaksha Vishnu, and then he enters into each atom as Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and so this one Shayadaksha Vishnu, right? So all these things happen. So his opulences, right? All the things which are floating in the space, right? So it's all due to his energy, yeah. And so most of the time here, even the Prabhupada has given the example of Atlas. Yeah. So wherein, if you look in, right, so the Atlas actually lifts the globe, and then he's actually uh, hunched. But so in Lord's case, that's not the case. Yeah. So he creates, he gives the administrative jobs to the others, and then he gives the independence to the jivas also. So he has created all the structure and everything, right? And then he has left to us whether we want to utilize this life properly in the devotional service. If we do the devotional services, then he guides us. He gives us dadami buddhi yogam, and then he actually um, moves. So he takes us also from, he delivers us from this material existence. So it is our individual's prerogative. Yeah. So he has given that choice, and so we'll just see through the next slides. It says the same thing. I probably okay. So anyhow, so we'll cover. I think here I should touch base. Yeah, here it is, right? Yeah, not like Atlas who is tired. Yeah. So and actual devotional service begins after liberation. So this is at so once we actually surrender to him, right? After liberation, only this actual devotional service begins. Yeah. And here say for the potency bit, right? So he actually showcased us so many potencies, right? So which are unimaginable. Yeah. So when he was a small kid, right? So he did show the entire universe to Yashoda Maya, right? So in his mouth, when he opened, then he could see. So all these are so beyond our imagination. Yeah. So and even the other feats also, right? So, like lifting the Govardhan and all those things, right? So he could do it. So those are all which we can't actually think of also as a human being, right? So as a human being, at the best, we may actually, if you want to simulate, you can actually have the cows and then you can take it for grazing. Apart from that, we can't do anything which the Lord has done, right? So, and so he does simultaneously everything, right? So, like even in the Brahma Mohan Leela also, right? Vimohan Leela, so wherein all the cows and calves were stolen. So, but uh, see, he actually manifested into all those cows and calves, right? So all those things we can't think of, yeah. So, but there are few, right? So who actually question these all things, and then though knowing these all things, right? So that they actually do not understand, yeah. And say we here even the seventh verse, right? So it talks about the creation, so which we touched base yesterday, right? So uh, Brahma's day is everything starts, and then once it's night, and again it goes back, yeah. And at the end, what happens? The Mahapralaya comes in, and all the living entities go to the Pradhana or the Vishnu, yeah. So and so the three Vishnus we just spoke on, right? So how they actually manage this, and here there is an example, so which a small story, so which I'll share you. So about the cobbler. So I'm not sure so how many of you have heard, but I'll tell you. So if others have not heard, uh, then there's a story of a cobbler and a brahmana. Okay, so Narad Muni actually passes by. Um, so and first he meets a brahmana. Okay, and so the brahmana says that this I'm giving this example for this. His opulences and then his potencies, right? And then his unconceivable things which he does in. So first the Brahmana asks, if you're visiting to the Lord, right? So then ask him, so when will I get salvation? Okay. When he asks that. Similarly, when Narad Muni goes ahead, right? He meets a cobbler. Okay. And then the cobbler also asks the same question. So he says, once you meet the Lord, then ask him, so when I will get the salvation. Yeah. So then Narad Muni actually goes to the Lord, and then he asks, so two of them asked me this question. So one was a Brahmana who was a learned Brahmana, and then he asked me, saying that when will he get salvation, and the other one was a cobbler who asked. Then Lord Vishnu replied that the Brahmana as salvation, I don't know. So how many births it will take? He may take a few births, he said. So he'll not he'll take more births, and then only he'll get salvation. So when asked about cobbler, he said that he's going to get salvation in this life only. Then Narad Muni got bewildered. He's, he couldn't understand. So he asked this question. So how are you telling this? Then the Lord said that go and tell them, if they'll ask, so what was the Lord doing? So when you met him, right? Tell them that so the Lord is trying to put his threading, basically the elephant, into the say needle. Yeah, so needle has a small hole, right? So into that needle, right, he's trying to actually thread the elephant. He's trying to push. Uh, okay, Narad Muni said that. Okay, and then he came down. So and then he met with the Brahmana, and then the Brahmana asked, "What did the Lord say?" And then what did he didn't ask what did the Lord say, but what was the Lord doing? And then Narad Muni said that the Lord is trying to thread elephant in the needles. uh, hole. And he started laughing. He said that it looks like you have not even visited the Lord. Yeah. And then so you are actually giving some rubbish answers. Yeah. And then Narad Muni actually went forward, and then the cobbler asked, "So what was the Lord doing?" And then Narad Muni said the same thing. So the Lord was trying to actually thread the elephant in the needle's hole. So then the cobbler actually started weeping. He said that the Lord, the Lord can do anything. Yeah. So then Narad Muni was inquiring, how do you say that? Do you believe that Lord was doing so? This elephant he was threading into the hole of the thread. Then he says that yes. So then he says that if Lord wants it, he can do anything. Yeah. So he was sitting under a banyan tree. He just gave an example, saying that, see, I'm sitting on near a banyan tree, underneath a banyan tree. Say the small seed which falls up, right? So from the fruit which falls up from the banyan tree is so small, and then it has got so many seeds which fructify and become this big banyan tree. Yeah, a small fruit can be seeds of that fruit can be converted to such a big banyan tree. So he said that Lord can do anything. So he had complete faith in the Lord. So then Narad Muni's answer, he got the answer. Yeah. So why the Lord said that the Brahmana will take births to get salvation, but in this life itself, the cobbler will get liberation. Yeah. So that's the stories wherein for and to understand the examples of this inconceivable opulences, right? So that's which is not imaginable. So we can't think of, yeah. And then we have seen a few of the demonstrations which he did it in his young age. Yeah. And this is, O son of Kunti, at the end of millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So this we covered, right? So end of Brahma's life. Yeah. The whole cosmic order is under my will. It manifests again and again, and by my will, it is annihilated at the end. So these all calculation yesterday we saw in, right, 4 yugas into 1,000 years, Divya yugas, all those things. Yeah. Oh Dhananjay, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached, seated as though neutral. Okay. So here, so Lord's relationship with creation and destruction, right? And the destruction also happens under the Lord's supervision. Yeah. So here, material world is inferior. Okay. And the superior energy is on the other end, yeah? The spiritual one. Discussions on Lord Krishna's creation and destruction, right? So how Krishna's creation refutes the modern conception of evolution. Yeah. So modern concept, there is gradual evolution of species from one to another, beginning from creation. So Krishna's creation, all species of life are created immediately. So he glances, right, by glancing the material nature. So he creates, he gives the seed, yeah? And based on our desires, right? So last Janma desires, so of our past deeds, so we get that body. Yeah. So it's like the atta, right? So with atta, you can make anything. You want chapati, you can make. You want paratha, you can make paratha. You want something else, gujia, you can make. That's all our desire. Yeah. So what we want to eat. Similarly, so what we have desired, so that will manifest. How the material world is maintained, if Krishna is Parameshwara is aloof. So this is more of Krishna's supreme will is always present. Yes, he is always present as Paramatma, right? In all. Yeah. Everything is definitely under supreme will of the Lord because he enters as three Vishnus. This we touch base. No direct involvement of the Lord. He is not involved, as I said, right? So that minute independence is given, and then he creates the administrators to look in, right? And then what is the basis of creation? Creation takes place to accommodate inclinations or the desire of various living entities. And this is Prabhupada gives an example of the judge, right? So a judge passes orders, right? Say in the court, right? So whosoever has done robbery, he gives some punishment, and then if there are any financial matters, he settles. If there is any death penalty, he gives in. So he gives all the judgments, but he is not in any profit or loss, right? So he's doing his, he's not involved in any of these activities. Yeah. So his work is to give judgment, yeah, and then be aloof from those activities, right? So it is same way, yeah. So and even in this verse, right, in 9.10, the Lord says that Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetuna ne kaunteya jagat viparivartate, yeah. So the material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings by its rule. This manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Yeah? So this is the whole cosmic world and everything, right? So is working under Krishna's direction. Yeah. So Lord is Father and material nature is mother. Yeah. The Lord glances, but species are dedicated based on past deeds. This we covered, right? And without the superintendence of Supreme Personality of Godhead, material nature cannot do anything. Yeah. And the Lord is neutral and aloof. Okay. So management is done by material nature on his behalf, and then he is not attached to any of these things. Yeah. So, and then this is the next sections wherein the non-worshippers and worshippers, right? The fools. We'll cover this fool section and stop it. Yeah. So 2 verses. Fools who think Krishna is an ordinary human being possess a temporary form. Yeah. And then become atheists and are defeated in their endeavor. Yeah. So in this section, right, and the next about the devotees, right? He touch bases about the Mahatmas, yeah. So who are actually elevated souls, right? So Mahatmas are always fixed, right? Say they are fixed, and then their job is like all 24 hours, right? So they'll be thinking of the Lord, and these guys also, at least, so like the demons which we had in, right? So like Kamsa and all, right? So they were at least thinking of the Lord in a negative way, right? So that is okay. The fools thinking in that way is at least one way okay, right? So they got liberated. In one way or the other, they were remembering the Lord, yeah. Shishupal and Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu. But that's not the right way. Yeah? So we shouldn't actually look the Lord in that way. Yeah. So this is 9.11 verse. Avijanati mamamudha manushyam tanum ashritam param bhavam ajnato mamabhuta maheshwaram. Yeah. So fools deride me when I descend in the human form. Yeah. So because majority of them couldn't understand when Lord's presence was there on the material world, right? And then they do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all to me. Yeah. So here, so janati, so one or understanding who knows about the Lord, right? So this 4.9 is what? Janma karma chime divyam, yeah. So they are liberated, yeah. And Ajnati or ignorance of Lord Krishna continues in this. So those who are ignorant, right? So they actually get into this cycle of birth and death, yeah. Avijanati is nothing but misunderstanding about Krishna will lead to increased bondage, yeah. So if we don't follow the Shastras, right? So, and then say if we are not taking up to Krishna conscious, right? Then we will be actually tightly coupled with all these things, yeah, ignorant, pride, false prestige, and then say we'll be hankering for them. Yeah. Will not get liberated. There will be bondage. So we'll be serving Maya. Yeah. And then this, those who are thus bewildered are attached by demonic and atheistic views. Yeah. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fugitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So this is what. So because they'll have to serve Maya, right? So when they'll not serve here, so this is what the fate of Duratmas. Yeah. So fate of those who out of bewilderment disrespect Krishna's form, right? So this is Hiranyakashipu, right? So who was torturing Prahlad, and then see he wanted to be immortal, which never worked on. Yeah? Okay, so we'll stop here. I think even the slide wise, right? We are at the 30th slide. So we covered half of it. So next half we can cover in the next section. So this is we covered until 9.12. Attendance sheet is shared. If you can punch in your attendance, yeah. And one more thing is next week, and possibly I may not be available on one day, most probably on Sunday. Aishara Mataji, I'll inform you about that. So maybe we may have to cancel one class, but I'll be there for one day, yeah, either Saturday or Sunday. Most probably I'll not be there on Sunday. Okay, Mataji. I'll inform you, Mataji, wherein you can actually inform others. Hare Krishna. So any questions related to today's discussion? Okay. So today is Ekadashi. So chant more if you can. Read Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, whatever you're reading, yeah, Krishna book, yeah, or listen to the lectures. Any, if you are nearby to any of the temples, if you can go, and then visit those temples and then listen to the bhajans, kirtan, yeah, do spend your time in devotional service, yeah. So, okay. So we'll wind up for today's class. I believe there are no questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
Prabhuji, according to you, to understand Gita, Bhagavad Gita, what do you like say like how many times we need to reread a particular chapter? Because for me, reading it only a single time, or maybe again a second time, I'm still forgetting the content of the previous chapter when I go to the next chapter. So, what according like what you can advise us in this case, Prabhuji?
Yeah, Prabhu, actually, as we move on with this chapters, right? So read those chapters. Now I covered how many? So I'm covering the ninth chapter, right, Prabhu? So ninth chapter you read, and then the next also, right? So this week, if you dedicate for ninth chapter, right? So it'll be easy. So whatever questions you have, right? So you can ask in, and then and the next weekend, right? I'll complete 9th chapter. Okay. And see, Bhagavad Gita, if we read once, right, so we can't actually grasp everything. Yeah? So any number of times you read the same verse, same sloka, same purport, right? The realization should be different. Okay. Uh, so there is, say, like there is no end. So it's not that I have read Bhagavad Gita once, then it's done. No. So even why Naminista Prabhu has created so many levels is to reread the book, right? So in level 1, none of them read. So actually, so we look in, so we actually understand those 18 days and then try to finish off the quiz. And then maybe a few may read, but not all, right? At least in the second level, right, Prabhu? So you should be well versed with 108 slokas, which are there, right? So important slokas you should know in the second read, yeah, or your first read. Yeah. And then there will be level 3. Yeah. So in there, right? So the I think in level 3 now the pattern is what, so at least in our time, right? So it was an group discussion kind of thing, so wherein we'll get into those topics and then it will not be monotonous. Yes, it is. If you look in now, right? So in majority of the classes, I only ask the question and I only answer it. So it's not in that way when it comes to level 3. And then in level 4, right, there will be a vertical study. Okay. So concept wise, right? So you'll be given some concepts, so which you'll have to work on. Yeah. A theme based uh, actually say reading of Bhagavad Gita happens, and then the Bhakti Shastri, right? So we'll have to read everything in detail. Yeah. So and you'll have in Bhakti Shastri there are exams which are from ISKCON board. Okay. So every 6 chapters will have to appear, shloka recitations will have to appear the exams. Yeah. And we'll get marking, attendance, and the and even in even in fourth level 4 also you'll read NOI and NOD, and Bhakti Shastri again you'll read NOI, NOD, and then there'll be exams for it along with Isha Upanishad. Yeah, so Bhakti Shastri itself is 1.5 year. So this is how Bhagavad Gita is all out, Prabhu. So it doesn't come in one read. We'll have to keep reading. Okay, Aishwarya Mataji, you have raised your hand. You wanted to tell something.
Yeah, Prabhuji, because I was taking level 3, I wanted to tell that
Mm.
like now we are doing Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, and Ishopanishad in detail. That's it.
Oh, okay. So now
Nothing else.
no more this Bhagavad Gita in level 3, is it?
No, Prabhuji. What they did was level 4 they shifted, and level 4 is just Bhagavad Gita presentations. So we have to prepare and we have to give presentation.
So the same thing, right? This um, say theme wise. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. They split us into 4 team. I mean, 4 members in a team, and we have to do that for level 4. Level 3 is just NOD, NOI, and Ishopanishad.
Okay. So now this might be the introduction, and then again we'll reread in detail in Bhakti Shastri.
Prabhuji, so do we have the list of like all the important slokas from different chapters? Like I remember one chapter, Aishwarya Mataji, she did take all the important slokas from chapter 2. We covered the Bhakti Viksha. But the reason why I'm asking is not just to refer only those, but when we study overall like chapter. So Prabhuji, from my personal experience, I am finding Krishna book like when I read Krishna book, so I just forget like not the number of chapters I completed. It really goes very smooth. Like I am able to complete 1.5, 2 chapters when I pick up. But when it comes to Bhagavad Gita, it is like okay, I pick up first chapter and then it becomes a little bit overwhelming when I do more than 4 slokas. Then I close it and I just feel like, okay, I'll read it next tomorrow.
See,
Prabhuji. So this is what happening with me actually, Prabhuji.
so
Hare Krishna.
Krishna book is written like a story. Yeah? So it's like a movie, right? So if you actually read through, right, pages and pages, you scan on, and then he'll be actually visualize. It's more like a movie, right? But this is the God's conversation, right? So, wherein he touch bases so many things. Yeah. So it takes time, Prabhu. So Bhagavad Gita. So even if you read 10 times also, right, you feel that okay, so I'm lacking something or the other. So it's a book which has to be read all throughout our life. Yeah. So it's not, there is no end. So there are only 700 slokas, but everything. And then gradually, as you realize, right, Prabhu, so as we develop the taste and all in devotional service, right, our realization for the same purport will be different. Okay. So as we had this three levels of level 1, level 2, and level 3, right? So there was three categories of devotees, right? So the first level, the Kanishta Adhikari, if he reads the purport and this, right, he'll actually look into one side of it. When you advance, second level, the same purport, you'll have 5 more meanings. When you are advanced, you'll have 10 more meanings. So it's always there, Prabhu. The only thing is we'll have to be in touch. So without being in touch, right, we can't actually say relish. So, and then once you start reading, right, Prabhu, so you'll get the taste. And whenever you get time, right, you'll pick Bhagavad Gita. So it'll come, but it takes time. And then uh, even from the other side, that our effort should be there, and then we should have a little bit mercy from the spiritual master and Krishna, right? So, but these things will happen. So, our thing is that we should always try to learn, yeah, and that is how you can move on from. So, it will happen. So, but it takes time. Yeah?